Speak in English again. I think I would just try and get in and answer some of the questions because there's quite a few. I think it's great that there's just so much enthusiasm and engagement with all of this. It's really great to like being part of this. So thank you for inviting me and engaging. I think there's a few things I wanted to pick up on. A lot of people have brought out issues of governance and capacity, about municipalization, and these are issues that obviously are very structural to the system that need to be dealt with. So I think a lot of people have identified that in different ways, talking about how budgets are allocated and ability for municipal managers, and we've seen that from the research this morning. So I think trying to maybe reconsider how the municipalization process is working and how we define power and authority and decision-making processes within the health system is something that needs to be scrutinized and looked at in the health system transformation agenda. I think the second issue that underpins the health system really strongly and underpins so many of the issues that have been raised here are concepts of equity, social rights, universalization. And these really underpin the ideology of austerity and the ideas of, are people entitled to resources? Are people entitled to protections? And I mean, I don't really want to write this in sort of the presentation, but I see austerity, especially in weaker countries with less accountability mechanisms, as a form of elite capture. That those that run are very close to big business, close to media outlets. It's a way of consolidating power and removing rights and liberties that would ensure more that equity is distributed throughout the system and power is imbued in those that have voice. And I think that's very scary, and it is scary in Europe as well. I think trying to move on from that, and a lot of people have mentioned now as well, trying to engage civil society and trying to engage and trying to mobilize individuals in dialogue. And actually, this does work. So in Europe, we're seeing rollback from austerity through civil pressures. Recently, the government in the UK caved into an austerity measure that was put into law that mandated that the caps on public wages would not rise. And through civil pressure, through media pressure, these have been rolled back. And it's about a lot of, when you have a fragmented sort of anti-austerity agenda, it's about coming together under clear, concise messages that can move forward the agenda. And it's not just about being anti-austerity, it's about dialogue, appreciating that there is need for reform, there is need for discussion, and how can we guide the process to make the system better? Rejecting the principles, rejecting processes which undermine equity and universality, but actually maintaining, an agenda which moves forward. So I think people have touched on that, and I really support some of the ideas that people have said about making literature that's accessible for individuals. This is really important and has been important in the UK and Europe about, educating people about austerity. And we're seeing in Europe that declining support for austerity. A lot of people thought that austerity was bad but necessary. And actually that is changing now. People don't see it as necessary for the economy, and it's harmful for the economy and for people. So what was I've written so many notes. I think the other thing I would be a little bit concerned about is that I'm always concerned about this, and it's the rise of the fake news. But I just call it general ignorance, really. That people in power and people that have a pro-neoliberal agenda find ways of undermining credible science and undermining credible dialogue and discussion about these things. So it's about preparing your fight and your agenda against this. The UK, I'm going to come on to Brexit in a second. We had a statement given out by a politician in the UK who is now a member of our cabinet. And he said, we're sick and tired of hearing about experts. We don't care about evidence or science. And that's really the sort of attitudes that underpin this. So really, clear, consolidated, approach to delivering and debating against austerity and the harms. I think definitely the fact that people didn't understand austerity and what it caused has meant that what the problems about Brexit in the UK. And actually, austerity is probably one of the biggest causes of Brexit in the UK, actually. If I move on to it, I mean, I really can't express my distaste for Brexit enough, really, because it does actually, not only is it the economics, but it's actually my social political views about solidarity and coming together. So I think, coming on to Brexit, I think that austerity and recession have been a major cause of Brexit. And if you look in the UK, there is so many populations that have been left behind since 2007 that have not seen growth and have not seen benefit, while we look in wealthier populations and they continue to grow. So this dividing society and this increasing inequality is what is undermining a lot of progress. How do you bring people into like a socially inclusive agenda as things divide? So it's about tackling inequalities as well. If I think Brexit is good or bad for the NHS, I mean, it's very hard to make these decisions now. I think I think generally it will probably be very bad, but I'm trying to give a balanced argument. For example, a bad element is workers. We have a lot of migrant workers which come from Europe, nurses, doctors, healthcare workers, that work in the NHS, and they may have to leave. So what are we going to do with the huge funding staff shortage in the NHS? But on the other hand, I have issues about medical regulation in Europe. The European Medical Association has strong ties to big business and pharmaceutical agencies. And maybe this could be the opportunity for the UK to regulate our own medicines better. But then that relies on our politicians, and that's difficult. So there are opportunities, but there are huge challenges for the health system. But a lot of our law is now prescribed by the EU. So where the law is insufficient, maybe this is an opportunity to strengthen, but still there's a lot of challenges. So I think there were just some of the things I really wanted to hit on. And I think the last point with the lady, I didn't catch your name, that you made about highlighting some of the positive social protection experiments and policies that have actually delivered impact, and really identifying what has worked and what hasn't, I really think is important for fueling a social movement and fueling a civil society agenda which can actually effectively equip political candidates in the new year with evidence and actually bring to the table. It's cleaner on the table about what you think. The media aren't asking these questions, but it's slow to grow, and it can grow. So they're my comments. So thank you.
Charles, por favor.